Before we dive into the concluding part of this amazing story, kindly smash that like button, subscribe for more incredible stories, and share this video with friends and family. Your support means the world to me, and together we can spread these important messages about self-worth and true love. Now let's enjoy this story together. The evening's main event was scheduled for 8 p.m., the formal introduction of Chief Adebayo's heir. As the hour approached, the grand ballroom filled with Nigeria's most powerful people, all eager to meet the person who would inherit one of the continent's largest business empires. When the lights dimmed and a spotlight appeared on the stage, the room fell completely silent. Chief Samuel Adebayo, looking distinguished and powerful in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, walked to the podium with the confidence of a man who had built an empire from nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice carried clearly through the ballroom. Tonight marks a historic moment not just for Royal Crown Industries, but for Nigerian business as a whole. For the first time, I will introduce you to the person who will lead this company into the future, someone who has earned this position not through birthright, but through demonstrated excellence, integrity, and vision. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. David and Blessing exchanged glances, both wondering if this mysterious heir might be someone they could court for business partnerships. Mrs. Okafor adjusted her jewelry nervously, hoping that her family's current troubles wouldn't prevent them from making a good impression on whoever was about to be revealed. This person has spent years studying not just in boardrooms and universities, but in the real world, understanding how business decisions affect real people. They have worked in every level of the economy, from service jobs to corporate consulting, gaining insights that can't be taught in any business school. Chief Adebayo paused, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on the Okafor family. For just a moment, his expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce you to the future CEO of Royal Crown Industries and your new business leader of the year, my daughter, Grace Adebayo. The ballroom erupted in applause, but not everyone was clapping. In the back corner where the Okafor family stood, 3 people had gone completely still, their faces cycling through expressions of disbelief, recognition, and growing horror. Grace stepped into the spotlight wearing a stunning gold evening gown that perfectly complemented her transformed appearance. Her hair, once always pulled back in a simple ponytail, now fell in elegant waves around her shoulders. Her posture radiated confidence and authority. Her smile was serene and powerful, but it was still unmistakably Grace, the woman they had humiliated and discarded, the nobody they had treated like trash, the pregnant wife they had thrown out into the streets. David's face went white as recognition fully dawned. His hands began to shake, and he grabbed onto a nearby table for support. Blessing's mouth fell open in shock, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the terror in her eyes. Mrs. Okafor looked as if she might faint, her usual composure completely shattered. As Grace took the microphone, her voice was clear, confident, and unmistakably authoritative. Thank you all for this warm welcome. I'm honored to accept this responsibility and excited about the future we'll build together. She spoke about business ethics, about the importance of treating all employees with dignity, about the responsibility that comes with power and wealth. Every word was carefully chosen, every phrase designed to resonate with the audience while simultaneously delivering a message to 3 specific people in the back of the room. In business, as in life, we often make the mistake of judging people by their current circumstances rather than their true potential. We dismiss individuals based on superficial characteristics, their background, their current job, their social connections, without taking the time to see their real worth. David felt each word like a physical blow. The woman on stage wasn't the humble cleaner he had married and discarded. This was someone with presence, power, and authority that commanded respect from every person in the room. True leadership, Grace continued, requires the wisdom to recognize value wherever it exists, the courage to stand up for what's right even when it's difficult, and the integrity to treat all people with dignity and respect. She spoke for 20 minutes, outlining her vision for Royal Crown Industries and for ethical business practices in Nigeria. The audience was captivated, responding with enthusiasm to her combination of business acumen and moral authority. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted for 5 full minutes. But Grace wasn't finished with her revelations for the evening. As the formal presentation concluded and the reception began, she had arranged for several other truths to come to light. Blessing's fabricated background began to unravel as investigative journalists, tipped off by Royal Crown security team, published detailed reports about her false claims of wealthy family connections, her forged educational credentials, and most damning of all, previously hidden security footage from the night Grace lost her baby. The footage, captured by cameras outside the Okafor house, clearly showed Blessing deliberately causing Grace to fall down the front steps as she was leaving with her suitcases. The fall that Grace had assumed was caused by her emotional distress and physical exhaustion was actually a calculated act of violence designed to harm both Grace and her unborn child. Mrs. Okafor's own secrets began emerging as well. Financial records revealed years of bribery, contract manipulation, and illegal business practices. Her charitable foundation, which she had used to maintain her social standing, was exposed as a money laundering operation that had stolen funds intended for orphanages and schools. As these revelations spread through the summit reception, the Okafor family found themselves increasingly isolated. Former friends and business associates avoided them, whispered conversations stopped when they approached, and security began escorting journalists toward them for uncomfortable questions. David, meanwhile, stood frozen in place, watching the woman he had thrown away command the attention and respect of Nigeria's most powerful people. The contrast between his current position, financially ruined, socially ostracized, morally bankrupt, and Grace's triumph was almost too much to bear. Finally, as the reception was winding down, David found the courage to approach Grace. She was surrounded by business leaders, government officials, and international investors, all eager to curry favor with Nigeria's newest power player. When she saw David approaching, she excused herself from the conversation and walked toward him. They met in a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the crowds and cameras. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The man who had destroyed their marriage through weakness and cruelty, and the woman who had risen from the ashes of that destruction to become someone extraordinary. Grace. David's voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion and regret. I don't know what to say. Grace looked at him with calm composure, showing none of the hurt or anger he might have expected. Hello, David. I had no idea, he continued, his words tumbling over each other in his desperation to explain. I never knew who you really were. If I had known. If you had known. What? Grace's voice was gentle but firm. Would you have treated me differently because of my father's money? Would you have loved me more because of my inheritance? Would you have been kinder because of my social status? David stared at her, realizing the trap his own words had created. Any answer he gave would only confirm what they both already knew, that his love had been conditional, based on what he thought she could offer him rather than who she truly was. Grace, please, he begged, his voice breaking. I know I made terrible mistakes. I was weak. I was influenced by others. I let fear and stupidity cloud my judgment. But I did love you. I do love you. Grace's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the woman who had once loved him so completely. David, I know you think you loved me, but love doesn't humiliate the person you claim to care about. Love doesn't abandon someone when they need you most. Love doesn't choose sides against your partner. She paused, looking at him with something that might have been pity. What you felt for me might have been affection, or attraction, or even genuine caring. But it wasn't love. Love protects. Love defends. Love stands firm when others try to destroy what you've built together. David's eyes filled with tears as the full weight of his failures crashed down on him. I know. God help me. I know. But please, Grace, give me another chance. Let me prove that I can be the man you deserved all along. Grace shook her head slowly. David, you had every chance to be that man. For 3 years, I gave you opportunities every single day to choose me, to defend me, to stand by the promises you made. You chose differently every single time. But I was confused, manipulated. You were an adult making choices, Grace interrupted, her voice firm but not unkind. Your mother's disapproval and Blessing's manipulation were tests of your character, not excuses for failing them. A strong man, A man capable of real love would have told his mother to respect his wife or lose access to her son. He would have seen through Blessing's manipulation and protected his marriage from outside interference. David's shoulders sagged as the truth of her words hit him. What can I do? How can I make this right? You can't, Grace said simply. Some actions have consequences that can't be undone, David. The baby we lost, the trust you shattered, the humiliation you put me through, these aren't things that can be fixed with apologies or grand gestures. She looked at him one last time with something that might have been fondness for the man he could have been. I hope you learn from this, David. I hope you become someone who values people for who they are, not what they can do for you. I hope you find someone who fits into your world naturally, someone your family approves of, someone who makes you feel complete. But that person isn't me, and it never will be again. As Grace walked away, leaving David standing alone in the corner of the ballroom, the full scope of what he had lost finally became clear to him. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost the one person who had loved him unconditionally, who had seen potential in him that even he didn't know existed, who had been willing to build a life based on love rather than material advantages. But Grace's story wasn't finished yet. As the weeks following the business summit unfolded, the consequences of the evening's revelations continued to ripple through Lagos society. Blessing's arrest made front-page news across Nigeria. The security footage of her deliberately causing Grace's fall was just the beginning. Further investigation revealed a pattern of criminal behavior spanning years. She had forged documents, stolen money from her own family's business, and even poisoned other women she saw as romantic rivals, though none as seriously as Grace. During her trial, Blessing's facade finally cracked completely. Gone was the sophisticated, well-spoken woman who had charmed Lagos society. In her place was someone desperate, bitter, and consumed with jealousy that had driven her to increasingly dangerous actions. I deserved him, she screamed at reporters outside the courthouse. I was perfect for David. I understood his world. I could help his career. I was everything that common girl could never be. Why should she get everything when I worked so much harder? Her words revealed the fundamental flaw in her thinking. The belief that relationships were competitions to be won through strategy and manipulation rather than genuine connections built on mutual love and respect. Mrs. Victoria Okafor faced her own reckoning as her years of corruption and cruelty were exposed to public scrutiny. The charitable foundation scandal was particularly damaging, as it revealed her callousness toward the very children and families she had claimed to help. Former employees came forward with stories of her abuse, her impossible demands, and her complete lack of empathy for anyone she saw as beneath her social status. But perhaps the most devastating blow to Mrs. Okafor was the revelation of how completely she had misread Grace's identity and worth. The woman she had dismissed as a common girl was not only wealthier than the Okafors had ever been, but came from a more powerful and respected family than Mrs. Okafor could ever claim. The social ostracism that followed was brutal. Women who had once sought Mrs. Okafor's approval now crossed the street to avoid her. Charity organizations removed her from their boards. Society events that had once revolved around her presence now pointedly excluded her from their guest lists. David, meanwhile, watched his business empire completely collapse. Without the partnerships and contracts that Royal Crown Industries had quietly facilitated, Okafor Holdings was revealed to be far less successful than it had appeared. Creditors called in loans, suppliers demanded immediate payment, and employees began leaving for more stable opportunities. But David's greatest punishment wasn't financial. It was the growing realization of what he had thrown away. As he watched news coverage of Grace's business successes, her charitable initiatives, and her emergence as one of Nigeria's most respected leaders, he began to understand the magnitude of his loss. Grace had loved him when he was nobody special, when he was just another privileged young man with more potential than accomplishment. She had seen something in him that even he hadn't recognized, and she had been willing to build a life based on that potential. Instead of nurturing that love and letting it help him become his best self, he had allowed fear, social pressure, and manipulation to destroy the best thing that had ever happened to him. The final confrontation between David and Grace came 6 months after the business summit, but not in the way either of them expected. Blessing, facing a lengthy prison sentence and consumed with rage at how her plans had backfired, arranged for one final act of violence. She had nothing left to lose and was determined to ensure that if she couldn't have the life she wanted, no one else would either. Using contacts from her criminal activities, Blessing arranged for Grace to be attacked as she left a charity event at a children's hospital. The plan was simple but deadly, a knife attack that would be blamed on random street crime, removing Grace from the world that Blessing felt she had stolen. David, who had been desperately trying to find ways to approach Grace for months, happened to be driving past the hospital when the attack began. He saw Grace walking toward her car, saw the attackers approaching from behind, and realized in an instant what was happening. Without hesitation, David threw himself between Grace and the knife meant for her heart. The blade that should have ended Grace's life instead pierced David's chest, and he collapsed in her arms as she screamed for help. As David lay bleeding on the hospital steps, looking up into Grace's terrified face, he managed to whisper the words he should have said years earlier. "I'm sorry. For everything. You deserve so much better than what I gave you." Grace held him as the ambulance arrived, her hands pressed against his wound, fighting to keep him alive not out of love, but out of basic human decency. "Don't talk," she whispered. "Save your strength. You're going to be okay." David survived the attack, but barely. As he lay in intensive care for weeks, fighting for his life, he had time to reflect on every choice he had made, every moment he had chosen pride over love, every opportunity he had wasted to be the husband Grace had deserved. When he finally woke up, he found Grace sitting beside his hospital bed. For a moment, he thought he might be dreaming. Surely she wouldn't waste her time watching over someone who had hurt her so deeply. "Why?" he whispered, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube that had just been removed. "Why are you here?" Grace looked at him with eyes that held neither love nor hatred, but something more complex, a mixture of sadness, forgiveness, and finality. "Because despite everything you did to me, David, I'm not the kind of person who lets someone die alone when I can prevent it. Because saving your life doesn't mean I've forgotten what you did to mine. And because I wanted to be here when you woke up to tell you something important." David waited, hardly daring to breathe. "I forgive you," Grace said simply. "Not because you deserve it, and not because what you did was acceptable, but because carrying anger and resentment was poisoning my own happiness. I forgive you for my sake, not yours." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "I hope you use this second chance to become a better man, David. Not for me. We'll never have that chance again, but for yourself and for whoever comes into your life next. Learn to love someone the way they deserve to be loved. Learn to stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. Learn to see people's worth regardless of their circumstances." "Grace, wait," David called out, but she was already gone. 6 months later, Grace stood in the boardroom of Royal Crown Industries, leading a strategy meeting with the confidence and grace of someone who had been born to lead. She had transformed not just herself, but the entire company, implementing policies that prioritized employee welfare, environmental responsibility, and ethical business practices. She had also established the Grace Foundation, a charitable organization focused on supporting women who had experienced domestic abuse, financial abandonment, or social ostracism. The foundation provided not just financial assistance, but education, job training, and most importantly, programs designed to help women recognize and rebuild their sense of self-worth. Sometimes, late at night in her penthouse office overlooking Lagos, Grace would touch the small jade bracelet her father had given her, a symbol of worth that no one could take away, a reminder that her value had never been dependent on how others treated her. David had sent letters over the months, which Grace never opened. She had moved beyond anger and hurt to a place of complete indifference. He was no longer a source of pain in her life, but neither was he a source of anything positive. He simply wasn't relevant to her story anymore. Blessing remained in prison, her appeals denied, her fake empire completely exposed. During her trial, the true extent of her manipulation and cruelty had been revealed, showing a pattern of behavior that went far beyond her obsession with David. She had destroyed other relationships, ruined other lives, all in service of her belief that she deserved whatever she wanted regardless of who got hurt. Mrs. Victoria Okafor lived in relative obscurity, her social influence completely gone, her financial resources depleted by legal fees, and the collapse of her family's business. She had become a cautionary tale whispered about in Lagos social circles, a reminder that cruelty and manipulation eventually come back to destroy those who practice them. As Grace looked out over the city lights, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain of David's betrayal, the loss of their child, the humiliation she had endured, all of it had been necessary to strip away the illusions that had kept her from claiming her true power and identity. She had learned that love without respect is not love at all, that someone who truly values you will prove it through their actions when tested, and that your worth is not determined by others' ability to recognize it. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's simply living so well, becoming so successful, and finding so much happiness that your former tormentors become irrelevant to your story. Grace had risen from the ashes of her broken marriage not just to reclaim her inheritance, but to become someone far more powerful than she ever could have been if she had remained in a relationship that diminished her. She had transformed pain into purpose, heartbreak into strength, and betrayal into wisdom. Her story became an inspiration to women across Nigeria and beyond, a reminder that no matter how low others might bring you, no matter how worthless they might make you feel, your true value remains unchanged. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover that you are worth more than you ever imagined. The little girl who had grown up in poverty, the young woman who had worked humble jobs, the wife who had been discarded like trash, all of these versions of Grace had led to this moment, standing at the pinnacle of success, surrounded by respect and admiration, finally understanding her own worth. Love yourself enough to walk away from anyone who makes you question your value. Recognize that someone who truly loves you will prove it when tested, not just when it's convenient. And remember that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing something that was never worthy of you in the first place. Because when you know your own worth, when you refuse to accept less than you deserve, when you choose self-respect over false love, that's when you truly begin to live the life you were meant to have. What did you think of Grace's incredible transformation? Have you ever had to walk away from people who didn't value you properly? Her story shows us that sometimes losing everything is the beginning of finding your true self. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your own stories of strength and resilience. If this story inspired you to value yourself more, smash that like button, subscribe for more incredible stories, and share this video with someone who needs to hear Grace's powerful message. Your support means the world to me, and together we can spread these important messages about self-worth and true love. See you in the next video.